Well, good morning, everybody. How you doing? We got misty morning here. Welcome to Lincoln Park here. Welcome to Clark and Fullerton. We got Thursday, November the 20th, 2025. And we got about low 40s. Hey, that's interesting. The light went off as the bike went through. I don't know how they're going to. Bikes don't have license plates. I don't know how they're gonna get that bike rider, but it triggered the cameras there, the cameras to get your license plate if you're going through a red light at the intersection. It sends you a ticket in the mail. And now they're going to get the divvy bike rider, but maybe they can tell the divvy bikes now. I don't know. But here, we'll cross. This is Fullerton. We're Clark and Fullerton here. We'll head down Cleveland. We'll zig and zag through the neighborhood here. Jessica, good morning here. Izzy, yeah. Scott G, David, thanks for tuning in there. Miriam, good morning. Grandma's Corner, good morning there. Razor, yeah, how you doing? So yeah, we're, oops, how you doing? And yeah, here's a nice blue house here. Yeah, it's kind of misty. I noticed even last night there were little droplets of water. You might have to intermittently run your windshield wipers if you're driving. We'll see how it affects the stream here. I'll have to every once in a while. I got a little towel I can wipe off the screen there. Let's get the camera straight here. Ferguson, how you doing there? Hey, CH Akuchi, how you doing there? Stephanie, good morning. Red light cameras. Oh yeah, I know. They that's why I said, I'm glad I don't drive, because yeah, every time it's hard enough going through, making that left turn through the intersection. You got to get out there, and if you don't get out with the yellow and red, you'll never make it to the intersection. Then you get a ticket in the mail, and then everybody's honking behind you. And even though you went through on red and two cars come behind you, and do they get tickets too? You get a ticket, and then the two cars behind you get a ticket, and it just becomes a tax on driving, where eventually people know you live in the city long enough. They reduced a lot of the speed limits to 25. You'll get caught in a school zone. You won't realize it, and you're just trying to get to work, and there's the ticket in the mail. Here's everything that can be taxed will be taxed. Here's the Twin Sisters. Survived the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. I think they were built in the late 1860s. But hey, hit that thumbs up here if you like this content. Thanks for tuning in there. It helps out. It's easy to do. Just double tap the screen. And I'm just walking to work. This is nothing big. I know I'm always in the same area here, walking through gentrified Lincoln Park and Old Town and the Gold Coast, and everybody's like, stop showing these wealthy, rich enclaves on the north side. It doesn't reflect the whole of Chicago. I know that, but this is where I live. I'm fortunate enough to live in these areas. People do like seeing the Lincoln Park Zoo lights. We were seeing them last night. People do like seeing the Bloomingdale's Mall when they do the Angel and the Rockettes and the Drummer Boy. We're going to maybe see that tonight. I work downtown, so at lunchtime there we can go to, today's November the 20th, Thursday, so that they at least said on their webpage that the Kris Kringle market there, the German Christmas market there at Daily Plaza, is going to open today at 11 o'clock. So we hope to go there at noon on YouTube, which is what we're on now. Thanks for tuning in. Hit the thumbs up if you like any of this. And then we'll cover the Christmas tree lighting Friday. Ernie says he's going to fly his drone. We'll try to get some images of that. And big parade on Saturday there for Michigan Avenue. But hey, we're just heading to work here. We're in Chicago, Illinois, United States of America, planet Earth. We're at Belden and Cleveland Street, Lincoln Park neighborhood. We got about 40, low 40s, a little misty, at least it's above freezing. And Belden, and yeah, they got the fountain all wrapped up. Most leaves are off these trees. How's everybody doing here? Sonia, Stella, Scott G. Old post office, yeah. I've been streaming. 2 years ago, I would stream on TikTok, and the old post office, they've renovated it. They got a food court at the bottom. They got a lot of businesses in there that it's being reused. It was vacant for years. They used it in the Batman movie, one of the opening scenes there. But eventually the security told me not to film there anymore, corporate security, which I'm like, I'm just promoting your building and I'm promoting your food court so people can go here. I guess they were worried about protesters or somebody didn't like me live streaming in there. And that shows you the difference between corporate space, where they can kick you out. You know, it's just like a mall. They can kick you out. It's corporate space. But I assume to be a public food court. Like if I'm going there to eat food, you know, you can't film yourself taking a picture of your meal there. But they saw me with the gimbal. So maybe I'll go back there. We'll try to get some footage of the old post office. I'll have to take the phone off the gimbal, and so they don't think I'm a professional filmmaker. You know, it's these gray areas. I have to bring my lawyer with me everywhere we go. But hey, welcome to Chicago. We're heading to work here on November the 20th, 2025. Even though it's before Thanksgiving, we got a bunch of Christmas activities today and tomorrow and Saturday. And so, buckle up here. Get your Christmas hat on. Get your turkey hat on. Yeah. Yeah, is Ernesto turning in there? Lambie T's tuning in. Big Blue fan, how you doing there? Ernie, yeah, Ernie, I want to see your drone. Ernie's talking about maybe flying the drone. We can get some drone shots of the Christmas tree lighting tomorrow. And if you don't, that's fine too. We saw other people flying the drones all over the place there. Maybe you'll see Dan Cruz there. Lime Tea Time there. How you doing there? Yeah. I'm glad Ernie's feeling better. Yeah, Ernesto was nothing worse than getting sick as we head into the fall and winter there. Ernie's been live streaming a lot, and you got to get your rest. Thanks, Ernie. I'm glad you're feeling better there. Thanks for asking there, Lambie T. That's good. Is anybody else sick? I hope everybody's feeling good here. But here we're at Webster in Cleveland. We'll dodge over on Webster. We'll head over to Hudson there. We'll talk about Policeman Bellinger's house that survived the Great Chicago Fire. But here, Cleveland and Webster, Lincoln Park, Chicago, heading to work here. It's kind of foggy. Beautiful housing all along here. I love these Italian 8. There's a row of Italian 8 row houses here. And they're just very tall and stately. Reminds me of some you would see in New York. That's why people tune in. They're like, is this New York? I'm like, no, this is Chicago. These Italian 8. You know, like Philadelphia and Cincinnati and Baltimore have a lot of Italian 8. So does New York City. New York City has probably the most Italian 8 buildings in the world, even more than Italy. And you see the cornice, the tall, narrow windows with the capstone. See the rhythm of it there. They all share walls. And look, 1, 2, 3, 4 stories there. And look, this one's nice on both sides of the street here. See, these are Italian 8. You can go to over the Rhine in Cincinnati, but we see it here in Lincoln Park, Chicago. And there's other areas of the city that have this. Karen, how you doing there? Naya Papaya, David, M. Ruby. Big Blue fan there, yeah. So, hey, welcome to Chicago. Low 40s Fahrenheit. Single digits centigrade, but we're above freezing. Webster and Hudson Street. Chicago, Illinois, planet Earth. I'm just waiting for somebody to ask what country this is. Where you at? Where you at now? Where you at now? Yeah. Yeah, I know. That's climbing those stairs, positive, negatives, everything, especially in the wintertime. Imagine it could be pretty slick. Yeah, a lot of stairs. Look at this building. Look how narrow that is. Just that little narrow part that juts out there. So Hudson Street. This is, Hudson Street starts and stops. It's like a mid-block street in between Sedgwick and Cleveland. And hey, they still got the pumpkin out. They got the gourds. Hey, look at that. Yeah, beautiful leaves there. How's everybody doing? Scotchy? Oh, the Bulls won the game last night. Last second shot with the three-pointer. Glad to hear it. Yeah, the Bulls are exciting to watch this year. They got a winning record there. Look how this one's set back. So all these are, and then this one decided to set back. It's just like, hey, I want a front yard. And these probably got backyards with like little garages in the back, little yards. But again, these are narrow, more narrow lots. There's probably not. I bet you that building that's set back, it's right on the alley. Like there's nothing behind it. See, that says, in memory of Lazarus Warbush, who immigrated from Russia in 1909 and died here shortly thereafter. 1908. Huh. So Lazarus Warbach, we'll look into that. I don't know who that is. I wonder if they were escaping 1908. Huh. I wonder if I never noticed that plaque. But here's Policeman Bellinger's house. Policeman Bellinger was known in Chicago after the Great Chicago Fire. Although he was a policeman, he saved his own house from being destroyed from the Great Chicago Fire. And imagine this block here. Every other house was destroyed and burnt down. And this was the only one that made it. And because he, you know, once the fire was burning for 2 days and 2 nights, and once the fire was out of control, this was the north end where the fire was starting to burn out, you know, and they said, everybody for yourself. Go tell the firefighters and policemen during the Great Chicago Fire, they said, go save your own house or just get out of the city. So he ran back, and the house was only a few years old, like 1 or 2 years old, and it's wood frame. And he got on the roof. He doused the roof with water, and when he ran out of water, supposedly he got cider kegs out of his basement, and there went his liquor stash. But he saved his house, because that was the biggest part of the Great Chicago Fire. It created a vast whirlwind, and embers would rain down and catch the wooden buildings on fire, and they had to keep dousing the flames until they saved the house. And you see there's a little plaque there, Policeman Bellinger. This is on Hudson Street. It's in between Webster and Dickens, Lincoln Park, Chicago. And then the twin sisters that we saw. So the twin sisters with that house are the only 3 houses I know in this area that survived the Great Chicago Fire. There were others that survived, but they tore them down in the 150 years that have since passed. And see, they built these workman cottages quickly, just like the relief shanties. There's a few relief shanties that we still see that got them through that winter, and then they built these better houses. Some of them are wood frame, and then when they increased the building codes, then they built brick apartments and the beautiful brownstones and Italianate buildings that are so well built because they're fireproof construction. That's why Lincoln Park has so many well-built buildings, because it was destroyed during the Great Chicago Fire, especially Old Town and the Gold Coast, and they rebuilt those buildings back better. And there, this is Dickens Street. How's everybody doing? So welcome to Chicago. Welcome to Lincoln Park here. We'll head through this little triangle development that used to be the Augustina Hospital. It was a Swedish hospital. They built this development in the late 1990s. How you doing? So here we'll cut through here. There's some other housing here. There's Sedgwick Street's this way. Samuel, how you doing there? Cindy, California, how you doing there? Octavius, yeah. Montreal, yeah, Montreal has many beautiful buildings as well. Montreal is a much older city with a richer history. Goes back to colonial times there in Canada. French Quebec there, or French, yeah. Here's, so Sedgwick Street, Dickens. Yeah, let's go down through this little path here. I'll try to keep quiet here, because this is private residential development here. I just want to show how they got these pathways they connect through, and how it's just, this is for educational purposes only here. See, they got these nice little triangle parks here, and you can see people got their little patios. So, hey, Lincoln Park, Chicago, Illinois, 40 degrees. We got November the 20th, 2025. Chicago, Illinois, United States, planet Earth. Heading to work here. We got 6:48 in the a.m. local time, Central Time Zone in North America. And yeah, we're gonna hopefully film the Kris Kringle market at lunchtime on YouTube here, noon to 1, and after 5 o'clock we'll get out of work. We'll head up to the Bloomingdale's Mall, see if they're doing any holiday. Last year they had the Rockettes, and they or a version of the Rockettes. I know that's New York City, Radio City Music Hall, but women and men were dressed like that, and the drummer boys, most of the men were drummer boys, most of the women were the Rockettes, and they had an angel singing, and it was beautiful. It was to promote get people to shop in the Bloomingdale's Mall there on Michigan Avenue, 900 North Michigan. But here we're in Lincoln Park, we're heading to work here. I was watching that Ken Burns documentary last night about the Revolutionary War. It's great. He was talking about the Oneida and the Mohawk as part of the Iroquois Six Nations. At that time it was Iroquois. Yeah, the Tuscarora had already moved up there from North Carolina. It was Iroquois Five Nations, and then became Iroquois Six Nations. The Longhouse. And Haudenosaunee. But yeah, it shows you how conflicted they were, because the Oneida sided with the rebels, the American patriots, and the Mohawk sided with the British because they historically had relationships with the British. Joseph Brant, that was his anglicized name. Of course, he had a name in Iroquois that was completely different, or the Iroquois family of languages there. And that's why they interviewed. I'm glad finally Ken Burns is saying some of how it impacted the Native Americans. It wasn't just the Revolutionary War, because Native American history is American history too, and how can you leave out how it impacted them when you talk about the Revolutionary War? Because certainly once the Americans won, they said, why are we helping the people that are going to take our land? You know, it's like it was the hard choices. It was these impossible choices. The Cherokee faced even a similar dilemma, and I don't think Ken Burns went into it as much. I wish he probably didn't have time, and it happened right at the beginning of the Revolutionary War, and people don't realize how big of an impact this had on the Revolutionary War, and I'll tell this in a second here. Here we're at Armitage, Lincoln, and Sedgwick here. We'll head down Sedgwick, and then we'll cut over on Orleans there. Hey, Dreamtown. So here's this new development. This is the new development here at Armitage and Sedgwick here in Lincoln Park. There used to be that CVS, one story. They tore it down. Yeah, we lost Stanley's and we lost Sedgwick's, these restaurants and bars here, but they got this mural here. Hey, giddy up. There's a sheriff in town. But yeah, and Jessica, I'm glad you know the difference between the eastern band of the Cherokee Nation and the western band of Oklahoma. And there's the Katuah band. There's three, and I'm not a member of the Cherokee Nation. I wish I was, but my ancestors assimilated and just became. We went with the white people, and that's why we lost our citizenship in the Cherokee Nation. But I have ancestors that were, and but it's more complex than that. The Natchez were involved, the Creeks, Cherokees, the Catawba fought on the American side. The Cherokee sided with the British because, okay, at the beginning, okay, we'll do this station break here, and then I'll go into my spiel here. Welcome to Chicago. Welcome to Lincoln Park here. We're on Sedgwick Street here, heading to work here on November the 20th, 2025. We got about low 40s. We got 6:53 in the a.m. And I'm going to talk about the Ken Burns Revolutionary War documentary, and something I think is important that he left out. And a lot of people leave it out because they don't realize it. I never realized it either until I researched Indigenous history, because some of it was glossed over, left out of the official stories we got from, you know, the victors write the history books, the Americans write it, and it was all about them and the British. But the beginning of the Revolutionary War, 1775, 1776, there was something called Lord Dunmore's War. Lord Dunmore was a Scottish guy. He was part of the House of Burgesses, an aristocrat that ran the Virginia colony, most powerful colony at the time of the Revolution, most populous colony with the most slaves. Enslaved people, which, you know, was part of the Revolutionary War, the thing they didn't solve. They should have solved at the beginning. They led to the Civil War. But the Cherokees, of course, were there. The Creeks, the Choctaws, the Seminoles, which came later pretty much. Seminoles were Creeks, a lot of them were Creeks, merged with other tribes. And I left out the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokees, Creeks, Seminoles. Okay. And then, you know, the Catawba were down there. Samponi had been largely assimilated with the Melungeons. And the Shawnee were back up in the Ohio country, even though they briefly were down by South Carolina along the Savannah River. That's after the Beaver Wars. The Iroquois forced most of the indigenous, this even affected the Potawatomi way back in the 1650s. They came all through the Midwest, overhunted the beavers almost to extinction because they traded beaver pelts for weapons, which helped them dominate their enemies. And they cleared out the Midwest of indigenous people. Isn't that amazing? And it messed up all the rivers, and because the beavers used to dam up the creeks, and it was kind of like a early ecological collapse, like what happened with the buffalo later for different reasons. But by the time of the Revolutionary War, the Cherokees had already fought. You know, at first the French tried to court them, just like the French courted the Shawnee, and the British tried to court the Chickasaw and the Cherokees and the Creeks. And so the Creeks and the Cherokees and the Chickasaws were more allied with the British, and the Catawba were more aligned with the Americans. It shows you the conflicts. The tribes had to decide who to ally with, and mostly determine on where they lived. The Catawba lived closer to the South Carolina and North Carolina colonies, and the Cherokees were still, the Overhill were over them. They had protection from the Appalachian Mountains. And so the British mainly courted them in the Chickasaw because they claimed to the Mississippi and disputed with France. So they would use a proxy war where the France would have tribes like the Potawatomi and the Potawatomi changed sides many times too. They would sometimes ally with the French, sometimes with the British. I can't speak for the Potawatomi. I don't know much about them, but I do know a lot about the Cherokees. And at the time of the Revolutionary War, here we are on Orleans Street, Chicago, Illinois. I'm heading to work here, telling this story about Cherokees in the early part of the Revolutionary War and how it affected founding of America. By the time of the Revolutionary War, the Cherokees were allied with the British because they actually fought against, they were allied with the British at the time of the French and Indian War, the 7 Years' War that happened earlier, late 1850s, early 1860s. George Washington was a part of that as well. When he was younger, he fought for the British at that time. That's how he got this experience to become a general later. The British, okay, so the Cherokee were weakened by disease and their enemies that they fought against, the Chickasaws and the Creeks. So they agreed to let the British, this is around the time of the French and Indian War in the United States, 7 Years' War in Europe. They agreed to let the British build two forts. One, Fort Prince George, which was on the South Carolina side of the Appalachian Mountains up towards North Carolina and Georgia, where they all meet. Those were the lower Cherokee. There were the Overhill Cherokee, which lived up in the mountains, and there were the Overhill Cherokee, or the Mountain Cherokee. Then there were the Overhill Cherokee that lived over by Chota on the Tennessee side, on the other side of the Great Smoky Mountains on the Tennessee side, south of Gatlinburg. It's Monterey, Tennessee, near there. There's a bunch of lakes. Most of the sites where the original Cherokee villages were, both on the South Carolina and even in the North Carolina mountains, and also especially in Tennessee, are now at the bottom of lakes. They did the Tennessee Valley Authority. They dammed up a bunch of rivers. And so a lot of the archaeological sites are now at the bottom of lakes. Every time I watch, like, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? And I watch Deliverance, where both those movies, the background is they're damming, they're going to create a dam which is going to fill up a valley with a lake. And, you know, that's what happened in the ancient towns and villages of the Cherokee are now under the bottom of these lakes. It's a good way to cover up history. But yeah, at the time of the French and Indian War, the Cherokees were allied with the British. Eventually, they ended up having a falling out, and the Cherokees ended up, it's very complicated. I won't get into it because that's not why I'm talking about this story. I want to get to the Revolutionary War. They attacked the British and destroyed the forts, and the British kind of looked at the Cherokee with more skepticism after that. But they still traded with them, and there was a lot of intermarriage between the colonial Europeans, like Scottish people, and Scots-Irish that went up there and traded with, just like John Baptiste Point du Sable traded with the Potawatomi. My ancestors traded with the Cherokee, and that became known as the mixed bloods, and which is a loaded term, I know, too. It was just mestizo, you know, the mixing of cultures and through bonds of marriage and procreation. But by the time of the Revolutionary War, the younger chiefs like Dragon Canoe. He was the son of Attakullakulla. Attakullakulla was a white chief. Like, there were red chiefs like Oconostota that were war chiefs, and there were white chiefs that were like the holy men, the peace dealers, the diplomats. You know, I would think of like Attakullakulla as a diplomat, a secretary of state for the Cherokee Nation, which, you know, that came later, but that came with Charles Remington Hicks. But time of the Revolutionary War, if you just joined me in Chicago, we're heading to work here. I'm telling this story about the Cherokees and the Revolutionary War because we're watching the Ken Burns documentary. It's about 7 o'clock on the dot. We got low 40s here in Chicago, Illinois. We're heading to work here. We're on North Park here, and Old Town. We're heading down towards North Avenue here. I'll probably head all the way down to North Avenue. So by the time of the Revolutionary War, the Cherokees they were confused, just like the Iroquois, the Oneida and the Mohawk and the, you know, on the Onondaga. You know, they just saw it as a civil war between the white people. They didn't understand why the Americans were fighting the British. They thought, aren't they all British, you know? And it was a civil war between the British. So they still had diplomatic, because of the Britain Empire at the time had their own Indian agents that were intermarried with the Cherokee. So they convinced the mixed bloods to fight on the side of the British. And the young full-blood chiefs like Dragon Canoe, they just wanted, they saw people like Daniel Boone and the Melungeons encroaching on Cherokee land, and they just wanted the settlers to stay. As the British promised, they said the British, they didn't want the American settlers moving west of the Appalachian Mountains at that time because they knew they couldn't control them, and the Indians, the Native American nations at that time, didn't want, you know, settlers encroaching on their land. So Dragon Canoe allied with the British, and the Indian agents for the British manipulated the chiefs there to get them to attack the Patriots in South Carolina. And so Dragon Canoe in 1776, with some other people, leaders at that time, they did some raids and attacks in the Carolinas down to Georgia on the Atlantic coast. And so the Americans retaliated. This all happened in 1776, right at the beginning of the war, when they were having the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. The Americans, the Patriots, organized, and this shows you the animosity between the Native Americans and the Americans largely stemmed from the Revolutionary War, because the Patriots, they feared the Native Americans because at that time they still could wield armies of 1,000 people and raid towns and villages, and that's what happened. And so they organized. There was this guy named Christian, his last name. This was a American war leader in the early part of Revolutionary War, and this other guy, I think John Sevier was a part of this as well. John Sevier was the Tennessee. He eventually became governor of Tennessee, and he would organize militia in Tennessee, which was, remember, at this time they were trying to organize the state of Franklin. It wasn't even the United States. It wasn't even the Articles of Confederation, but there was the Watauga settlements in Tennessee, they wanted to organize into their own state called the state of Franklin. Anybody heard of the state of Franklin? I have ancestors that have Franklin as their middle name. And it goes back to the state of Franklin. Isn't that amazing? And Benjamin Franklin, they were going to name it in honor of Benjamin Franklin, and which is interesting. But John Sevier was a part of that. And so they attacked. They destroyed many of the lower Cherokee villages on the South Carolina side. They went all through the mountains. They destroyed, even at the Murphy, North Carolina, the mountain towns there where the creeks had the mounds there at the middle of the towns, the old Cherokee towns there in western North Carolina. They went all the way to Chota, which is on the Tennessee side, the historical capital of the Overhill Cherokee in the 1700s. But Oconostota sued for peace because Oconostota was the war hero and the war chief of the French and Indian War. He destroyed Fort Prince George, and he was a beloved man of the Cherokee because he was a good war leader, and he actually briefly he was principal chief with that about the time of Atakula. This is the Cherokees talking about the Revolutionary War here, and but essentially the Americans took out the Cherokee military prowess right at the beginning of the war, which if later in the war, if the Cherokees would have came in on the side of the British, it could have affected the outcome of the war before the French came to our aid and got their military organized. And so I was looking for Ken Burns to talk about this more. He didn't talk. He did talk about the Iroquois, which I'm glad he talked about Joseph Brant, and he talked about the Oneida, who did help out the Patriots, the Americans. There was battles where Native Americans were involved. It was so tragic that Iroquois were killing other Iroquois, and they're like, why are we killing each other for this white man's war, you know? And that happened in the Civil War too. The Penn Indians, some of the Cherokees fought for the South. Stan Wadey, isn't that amazing? The last general to surrender wasn't General E. Lee, it was Stan Wadey from Oklahoma, which was Indian Territory. He was a mostly, you know, 3/4 at least indigenous Cherokee. And he fought for the South, and he owned slaves. I know, or enslaved people. It's American history is really crazy, you know, what went on. And but hey, I'm really enjoying the Ken Burns Civil War, or no, Ken Burns. He started with the Civil War 30 years ago documentary. Now he's doing the Revolutionary War, and it's fascinating. All this week on PBS, and it shows you the value of PBS. There's value in public broadcasting, and we shouldn't cut all the funding, which we have pretty much. You know, I know not everybody likes boring documentaries, but we can watch a Ken Burns documentary without having commercials the whole time, you know. And yeah, you got to pledge your support. Here's the Foxtrot. Here's North Avenue. Here we're heading to work here on a Thursday. Here we made it to Old Town, North and Wells. So we'll head down Wells Street for a while here. The Foxtrot's open. But hey, good morning. How's everybody doing? I've been missing all the comments because I'm telling this story. And I'm glad people know this history too. But the long and winding road. Here, welcome to Chicago. Welcome to Wells Street here. We got 7:07 in the AM, Thursday, November the 20th. The Kris Kringle Market opens later today. We got it low 40s temperature-wise. And I think we're not going to get much warmer. I don't think we're going to get to 50. Here's the Comedy Club here. Zanies. You can go to Zanies here. Yeah. Calvin Evans. House for sale. Hey, you can buy this house right on Wells Street here. Yeah, how's Maddie doing there, Chris? Yeah, Chris has been taking walks in the Forest Preserve there with his dog Maddie. Thanks, Naya Papaya there for asking there. How's Chris doing there? Yeah, Lambie T. Oh yeah, Lambie T. You know, I like talking to you. You know more about this stuff than I do, of course, or at least you know what you know how it affects your family. And yeah. I had to research all this stuff. I did not learn this in school. I did not learn this in college. I learned this all on my own. And as you know, as I know, you know, I know Howard Zinn tried to do it with America's people's history of the United States, but he left. History is so vast, you can't, you know, people know about Wounded Knee, and they know about Custer, and they know about Geronimo, you know, the Apache. My ancestors knew so little about their own history because they were uneducated. They grew up in Appalachia. Some of them weren't allowed to go to school because they weren't white. This stuff went on in the 1920s, you know, and so they didn't even know their own history. I would, you know, my mother, I would get little drips and drabs, and luckily I was still alive when my great grandmother was still alive. I was like 5 or 6 years old when she passed. 5 years old, I think, 6 years old. And I remember her. She chewed tobacco. She said, "Give me some sugar." I'm like, "No, don't kiss me, great grandma," because she was chewing tobacco. And it's not all indigenous people chew tobacco, but the Melungeons did. The Melungeons, the men and the women, chewed tobacco. And, you know, because they came from the South. Where does tobacco come from? You know, we got tobacco. We got the three sisters: corn, squash, and beans. The Creeks had the Green Corn Festival. The Cherokees adopted that because the merging of the cultures there, the eastern woodland indigenous people. And we forget there were thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of indigenous people east of the Mississippi. We associate America because of Westerns, the myth of the Wild West, John Wayne Western, that all the Indians only lived out west. Well, there's a reason for that. It's called the Indian Removal Act of 1830. And laws have consequences. My family was affected by Prohibition, the Volstead Act. It led to my direct ancestor being arrested, and he got in gun battles with, you know, federal agents over liquor. Same within the 1830s. Why am I a red-haired Scotch-Irish freckled-looking guy with a bunch of German ancestry? It's because the United States government under Andrew Jackson made the decision in 1830 to remove forcibly all the indigenous people. That was what the bill in Congress, and the Cherokees fought it. John Ross fought it, and the Supreme Court actually upheld the Cherokees' position. And the Cherokees, of course, the Creeks, the Choctaws, and even Potawatomi and the Shawnee were all affected by it up here too. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of the Cherokees. And the Andrew Jackson said, well, the Supreme Court doesn't have a military. They can't enforce it. I'm going to use the military. Winfield Scott, the hero of the the Mexican-American War that came later, they used the U.S. Army to clear out and force the Cherokees. And already by then, the Choctaws have already sold their land, moved to Indian Territory. The Creeks were diminished after the Red Stick War of 1812, 1814. The Cherokees fought on the side of the Americans against the Creeks. There's stories of atrocities of the Cherokees against Creeks. It shows you how complex indigenous history is. And some of the early settlers of the Cherokees, when they were in, this is before the Trail of Tears, some of them, a lot of Melungeons were involved with this too. They went west of the Mississippi River in the 1820s and 30s and were trying to court Pisarios with the Spanish government, like Texas, you know. And the more assimilated Cherokee fought battles against the Osage. The Osage was the ones that lived in Oklahoma before all the eastern tribes were forced there, like a biblical Babylon, forced to go out of their homeland and go west to what was less arable land so they could clear the Creeks and the Seminoles out of the cotton growing region of the South. And so the depleted land of the 13 colonies, especially the southern colonies, they could export their enslavement of African people to the Deep South. And so what became the Deep South used to be Creek and Seminole and Chickasaw territory, and the Choctaws in Mississippi. They cleared all those out, and even the Cherokees in northern Georgia, which they've been pushed down there by that time, and that became the Deep South, Dixie, cotton growing area that we associate with the antebellum South. But they had to clear out the indigenous people before any of that happened. And some of the assimilated indigenous people, the mixed bloods, they owned slaves at the time of the removal because they were assimilating to the white southern planter And they had these weird, they thought they were superior because they had some white blood. Isn't that amazing how that came from colonialism, and it even affected the mixed bloods? And, you know, you can go talk to people in Oklahoma in the eastern band of Cherokee Nation there in Qualla Boundary in North Carolina. I've been there. I went there with my mother. My grandfather went there, and he talked with them. We're not on the rolls because we're undocumented. And, you know, we weren't trying to get casino money. We just want to have a connection to our ancestry. And that's why I claim Melungeon, because it's even more complex with that. It goes back to the Spanish, and there is a drop of African blood. But I know it's very controversial talking about that. Here's Franklin Fine Center for the Arts. But hey, the Revolutionary War, I mean, really, I have other ancestors that fought as patriots. And I have ancestors that were loyalists too, that were, you know, just white people living from Europe, that living in colonial Virginia in the Shenandoah Valley. I have an ancestor that fought in Lord Dunsmore's war. I have an ancestor that lived in North Carolina at the time of the Revolutionary War. His father was accused of being a loyalist, but to prove he was for his son was like 18, and so he had to fight in the Continental Army as a private. I think he was under Nathaniel Greene, and who was under George Washington, but he was young. And I have another ancestor. His name is John Mill Creek Hurst. We know he fought in the Revolutionary War. You know why? He got a land grant from Tennessee. So see, they cleared out the Cherokees. The people that fought in the Revolutionary War, they got land grants either in the Midwest or Tennessee. He lived in the Shenandoah Valley of North Carolina, Virginia. He moved with the same year that Tennessee became a state. 1796, he got a land grant in Tennessee, and most of his family moved down there. He moved right into the area near Sneedville, which is the Newman's Ridge, where the Melungeons were already there. The Melungeons, they probably forced him out of the valley, and the Melungeons went to the hilltops. Melungeons were mixed. They were mixed, African, white, and indigenous, all mixed, because goes back to before Bacon's Rebellion and the indentured servant era of colonial America. But he lived there until the early 1800s, and he died. A tree fell on him because they were clearing the land. A lot of the early settlers of Tennessee, Kentucky, they're the ones that cut down all the trees. I have ancestors that were on the initial wave of colonial settlement that cut down the virgin timber, and you know, so I'm implicated in both the colonial history of America and the indigenous. I run the middle line. I got ancestors that fought both for the North and the South. You know, I have ancestors that owned slaves and didn't own slaves. You know, it's you know, and some of my ancestors that owned enslaved people, they were mixed blood Cherokees. You know, so everybody gets on their high horse and look down with superior. People's choice, the choices women had to make back then were impossible. And for the matriarchal Cherokee women, that real power, they traced their ancestry through the matriarchal line, the women. And that's why they were always confused when the white settlers and the white generals would go in there. They would talk to the war chief, and they would talk to the peace chief, and they would make treaties. They said, you really should be talking to the women. The women have the real political power in our culture. And from the patriarchal Christian culture, they never understood that, and they wouldn't even bother to talk to the women. But the Cherokee traders realized that if they could intermarry, and it was a win-win. The matriarchal Cherokee women, some of them were Natchez. Some of them were Natchez that escaped from Mississippi and joined the Cherokees, and some of them joined the Creeks. And they married. They would marry outside their tribe. That's how they weren't inbred. And they would marry the white traders, and the trader would get favored trading relationship with the tribe, but the wife would become wealthy, and her status would increase because her tribe would have access to weapons and European goods and red paint. And they would quickly adopt the European living style, where they would live in southern plantation houses with columns, and they were indigenous people. Isn't that amazing? The Osage, I'm sure you've seen the movie about the oil in Oklahoma, and how they were killing off the Osage to get the oil, the summer moon there, what flowers of the summer moon. Is that what that's called? And same thing, you know, it was kind of exploitative, but it also created a bunch of mixed blood offspring and they were conflicted. They existed in the what do they call that? The intersectionality of two different cultures. But hey, we'll head to work here. We'll head down. What time we got? 7:18. Yeah, we'll cut across here. We'll head down here. If you just joined, we're at Division and Wells Street here. We're heading to work here on Thursday. I'm talking about ancient American history here, the Revolutionary War, the Ken Burns documentary. Thanks for tuning in here. Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Anna. Thanks for the good information there. Yeah, patriarchal is you trace like your surname. You know, historically in Christian and Judeo-Christian, I guess Islam is patriarchal as well. You got your family name is your father's name. You know, traditionally now people have hyphenated names, and I know in Mexican culture, a lot of times you have a hyphenated name. That's why you have like Jose Diaz-Balart. He has the name of his father and mother hyphenated, which is interesting. But yeah, a lot of indigenous cultures trace your, especially so some indigenous cultures are patriarchal, like the Comanches. Some are matriarchal. Many of the eastern woodlands, like the Creeks and the Cherokees, are matriarchal. And you actually chase your family ties through your mother. And it was very confusing because a lot of the women would have multiple marriage partners over their childbearing years, because the Cherokee women could more easily divorce than the European women at that time, because that was part of patriarchy. They had no economic autonomy. Their economic was tied to their marriage, you know, and that was by design, you know. Anyway, but hey, is this making sense? I know I'm probably putting everybody to sleep here. Here's Division Street and LaSalle. But I find this fascinating because so much of this history has been left out. I'm glad Ken Burns is adding the Iroquois, but I think he left out some of the Cherokee, which is understandable because he probably didn't even realize. To me, it was a very important thing that the Americans knocked out the Cherokees right at the beginning of the war, because if they would have, and also they were hurt by disease. There was a smallpox outbreak that coincided every time there was a war, the French and Indian War, or the Revolutionary War, or the War of 1812. There was always an outbreak of European diseases in indigenous culture, because war and disease go together. And there was always talk of blankets with smallpox infecting. They would trade it. You know, they didn't trust the traders. They put some smallpox in the clothes, and then they noticed that next week everybody was sick. You know, stuff like that would go on. It was true genocidal warfare. Hey, look at this old Porsche here. So here we're at Clark and Division here, heading to work here. How you doing here? I say here a lot. Somebody actually wrote in the comments, they said, you say here and there too much. You sound like a hillbilly rube. I said, that's what I am. You know, I don't consider that a insult. You're actually, I'm like Jethro here in the city. I'm like the Beverly Hillbillies in the city. But here we'll cross, we'll cross here. We'll cross Clark and Division here. You see the Red Line subway stop here. But hey, we got all kinds of Christmas activity happening today. They're going to open the Kris Kringle Market, hopefully at 11 o'clock today. And here, let's head down. Hey, let's walk through the CVS. You can walk right through the CVS. How you doing? You can walk right through the CVS here. I used to stop at the CVS often. You can go in one side and come out the other. It's kind of interesting. So hey, welcome to CVS. Welcome to Chicago. We're heading to work here. This is the one by Clark and Division, right by the Red Line stop here. They still got Halloween stuff out. Hey, they got some Christmas stuff there. Hey, get your nutcracker. How you doing? Beautiful. Hey, got the Santa Clauses there. They got the snowmen there. Very nice. Hey, look at that. Got the teal Santa Claus. It looks like he's from Bahamas or something. There's Joe Osco. This is Clark Street. We just walked through the CVS there. Yeah, you can see that building's nice, but I always wanted it to be taller. I wish it was taller. It's a nice building, but it's not tall enough. So here, Elm Street and Clark, we'll go by these dealerships. See, we can head straight down Clark Street and cut through Washington Park here. Hey, Israel's tuning in. Anthem, how you doing there? Frugal Guru. You got rain in Vietnam? Yeah. Supermarkets, yeah. So I guess there's a new Aldi. Where's the new Aldi? Actually, I want to go this way. I'd rather go this way. It's more we went past these car dealerships earlier. Yeah, it's a squat Empire State Building. I know. You know, it's nice. It's got all these setbacks and stuff. It's just, it's not tall enough. I'm sure they limited it to height because people around, they were like, too much density. Too much density. I'm like, you're in the city. You expect density, you know. I know it's the same battles going on in Old Town with that tower south of where Jeremy and you should eat our base there. Hey, we're full. I don't believe this parking garage is full. Hey, the Blue Door Kitchen and Garden here. That's behind Biggs here. So this is, look at this. It used to be a residential mansion. Now it's a Biggs. They got a cigar place there in the Blue Door Kitchen and Garden there. I guess they got outdoor seating there. Yeah, Aldi. Yeah, so we're south of North Avenue. We're down by Dearborn. We're actually south of Division even. And we'll walk down Dearborn a little bit. See, I like this density. Look, they got the Elm Street here. We were just on Elm Street in Dearborn. Yeah, Aldi. There was an Aldi we walked by on Wells and Division. There's another one they opened. Maybe I can go buy it. There's another one that just opened. I saw somebody had a TikTok in River North. It's south of Chicago. I think it's on Superior or Huron. Maybe it's on Huron. We'll see if we can catch it here. But I missed the grand opening. Somebody got the scoop there and got a nice viewership on their video they made about the Aldi opening there. Used to shop at Aldi's, yeah. Yeah, Nightmare on Elm Street. That's what we called it during Halloween. We filmed the Halloween decorations there. Yeah, Broadway. Yeah, there's a Vietnamese enclave. It's been there even before the Vietnam War. It started with, they called it the New Chinatown, even though there's Chinatown Square and the Chinatown in Chicago on the south side. But yeah, on the north side, up there by Broadway and Argyle, they removed that. The Argyle stop actually looked like it had like a interesting Asian theme to it, but they took that down when they rebuilt but Argyle and Broadway, north of Lawrence and Uptown, there's a Vietnamese enclave. There's the Vietnamese Cultural Center there. It's actually a Schlitz Tide House. We filmed it. It's near the S&A Studios where Charlie Chaplin filmed a movie. Here's Dearborn Plaza Apartments. We're on Dearborn Street, Chicago, Illinois. We got 7:27 in the a.m. We're heading to work here. We got about low 40s. Yeah, they're going to open the Kris Kringle Market at lunchtime there. And then later tonight, Bloomingdale's Mall is going to do some Christmas activities. Tomorrow's the big lighting the Christmas tree. And we'll hook up with Ernesto and see who else is streaming there. Chicago Nuggies. Hey, Tara, how you doing there? So, yeah, there's many things about America that I'm ashamed about, but I don't know what you're referring to, what makes you sad about this. I'm walking through south end of the Gold Coast. Here's the Ruth Page Center for the Arts. We usually walk by this in the evening. Here's the Palette and Chisel, this nice, you can get your art classes here. Oil painting, watercolor, pastel, sculpture. Yeah, look at this controversial sculpture there. Here, we'll cross at Oak Street here. Actually, no, I want to stay on this side because we want to see Washington Square here. There's the Ogden School. Yeah, there's the Waldorf Astoria here. We'll head past the Newberry Library as we so often do. Actually, I will cross the street here. We'll just show you the Washington Park from across the street. And it's kind of dreary. We went through there earlier this week. It was already dark, and they had the neon dog collars on the dogs. It was nice. They were glowing in the dark, so you can see your dog running around there. There's the Newberry Library part of it. Yeah, Susan, how you doing there? Thanks, Chris. Thanks for helping out there. Yeah, I understand. I can't understand if it's somebody from outside the United States that's being critical of America for its ICE policy, which I know from a human relations standpoint, it's not a good look for America. I saw the Chicago Popes weighing in on it. You see that? And so Chris, I'll try not to. I'll change the subject so we don't get people going in the comments. We know the algorithm's listening, and Big Brother is watching. Here's the Harvest Baptist Church here, or Harvest Bible Church. Excuse me, Harvest Bible Church. It's not Baptist. It's I think it's Protestant though. Here's the Newberry Library. Look at that beautiful Romanesque. And there they got the Christmas lights around the fountain here. But here, Harvest Bible Chapel, right here on Dearborn Street, south of Oak Street. Chicago Christian Academy, now enrolling preschool, so they got a parochial school as well. The Holy Name Cathedral has a parochial school over there as well. Hey, look at this beautiful facades. Look at these round bay windows. This is on Dearborn Street, right across from Washington Square Park there. Look at this house. You see, I understand people don't like Chicago for its politics, but you got to appreciate our architecture and the quality of the buildings that were built and the wealth that was concentrated in the city at one time when it was the second largest city in the United States and like the sixth largest in the world. And no wonder America thinks its greatness is in the past, because you see, no one could afford to build a house like this now. Nobody under 40 could have, unless you're a billionaire. That's why this housing's so expensive, so well built. And they actually tore buildings like this down to build buildings like these, Here's the Mount Sinai Synagogue. I think that's what they call this. You can cross the street and get it. But look at the trellis there. Look at that. Look at the arch windows. Yeah, the stone container building. Yeah, it's the Smurfit Stone there. The diamond-shaped building. Adventures in Babysitting. Well, actually, and the stone container. Briefly, the London Guarantee Building was called the Stone Container Building too. It's confusing. Confuses me. But also the 150 North Michigan stone container moved around. Now they're in neither of those buildings with the company. But here's the dedicated 1997 Chicago Sinai congregation, founded 1861. 1861. This is a continuation of a synagogue in Chicago since the Civil War period. Isn't that amazing? And Chicago wasn't that large at that time. Look at the housing here, and here's State Street, and yeah, let's go down State Street here. Let's check out these Christmas lights here. We can head over to because State Street's okay. We'll get a better view to the One Chicago Tower if we cross over the other side here. Is anybody coming? Yeah, let's go. Let's go. So there's State Street looking south. There's the One Chicago Tower, just under 1,000 feet. That's all residential. The one behind the orange one. We'll go down. Oops, sorry. This is Walton Street. No. This is Pearson. Is this Pearson? Can't see the sign there. Here, look at this housing here. No, this is Delaware. Excuse me. We're on Delaware Street. So we're on Delaware Street. I always get these streets confused. 1 East Delaware, luxury apartments. Look at the nice Christmas lighting here. Here, the Talbot. You can live in the Talbot there. And look how tall the top of the Waldorf Astoria, that's housing up there. It's taller than this building. There's the Bloomingdale. So tonight, That's the 900 North Michigan building. That's where the Bloomingdale's Mall is. They're supposed to have Christmas activities. Thanks to Hubert for tipping me off. I knew it was, we filmed it last year. I knew it was coming up. So that'll give us something to do tonight. Hey, you get your furry hat there. Rag and Bone. You got the fall, winter stuff out. Your jacket. Here's the Tesla dealership. This is Rush. Yeah, we'll go down. Let's go down Wabash. We'll go down Wabash here. Chestnut. Margie R. West. Guru Suru. So the church, it said, it's the Sinai. Okay, I don't know about the Harvest Baptist Church. I don't know how old that is, but the Sinai congregation goes back to 1861. Apéro Chic, Le Bar. This is all French themed. The Hotel Sofitel, because the architect was from France. Hey, they got some Christmas trees here. The Sofitel. Yeah. Margie's tuning in there. Christy and Tara. Yeah, you got some condos on Indiana Avenue there. We got condos everywhere. So you get this view to the Trump Tower looking straight down Wabash here. Hey, look at that view to the John Hancock. And there's the John Hancock. Here's the Trump Tower. Some of the taller buildings there, vistas. So what happened, Tara? Let's see. Oh, you bought a Carhartt coat. 3 sizes smaller. Hey, Tara, that's great. That's awesome. Good job. Hey, keep up the good work. Very nice. So here's Loyola. Yeah, you're doing good. Chris is doing good. Yeah, Chris is downsizing too. I'm going the other direction. You think I'd lose more weight the more I walk, but I eat too much ice cream. Go Ramblers, students. Yeah, this is Loyola Universities. This is Loyola. There's the Pace Bus there. Here's see the Corby Law Center there. There's Loyola stuff, Loyola University, Sister Jean. Looks like they got a broadcast studio here. We've seen them have stuff here. Yeah, they got it. They could do their whole news broadcast right here. Look at that. We saw Channel 7 News yesterday. I posted that. That was nice. Made some new friends there. Hopefully, maybe they'll check out my content. They'll be like, thumbs down. No, they were good guys there. They were doing the same thing as me. We were watching them film the news broadcast there. Channel 7 News. So they haven't been having the windows open lately, but they had them open last night. So here, Chicago and Wabash. So I think that new Aldi's over there. I think it's. Do you see this building? At the bottom of that building, I think there's a new Aldi's. So we'll miss it here, but we'll get it some other time. We'll walk by there eventually. There's all the stuff on Chicago Avenue here. Yeah, let's see. There's some Christmas lights here. Let's check out the Christmas. We'll keep going down Wabash. There's the one Chicago Tower. We see it from the side. It looks a little more interesting there from the side. Chicago Avenue. There's the YMCA. Here's Pippin's. It used to be on Rush Street. Now it's over here. And so you get these interesting views to the John Hancock there. So the Holy Name Cathedral, this is the back side of it. This is Wabash. We'll head down these skyscraper canyons. Welcome to Chicago, welcome to Wabash. We're south of Chicago, we're heading to work here. We got about 7:37 in the AM, low 40s. We're gonna check out the Kris Kringle Market at lunch today on YouTube. It's supposed to open. But hey, the lights were pretty nice there last night at the Lincoln Park Zoo. They had the Friends of the Zoo only. They had it open, they had people riding the Ferris wheel. But, well, I got my, okay, thanks. Somebody gave me the good info last night. On Monday, it's free. So I went, you go to Lincoln Park Zoo lights. You got to get a QR code to get in. Normally you got to pay, but on Monday it's a free night. So I got a free ticket. And then the following Tuesday I paid. They're going to have some vendors. They're going to have like a Kris Kringle type market where they'll have booths and stuff. You got to pay to go into that, but I figured Tuesday night we'll do that. I'm actually paying to go to something to support the zoo. Here's Jake Melnick's here. Nice ribs. Here we're heading down Huron Street. There's alleys. I'll show you there's alleys in between. You don't see as many alleys in River North, but there are alleys. Chicago has alleys. A lot of Manhattan doesn't. We're in Chicago. There's portions of New York that have alleys, but it's out in the boroughs. But yeah, Chicago has alleys. There are gaps. But I know it seems like the buildings are right on top of each other. A friend of mine from Florida visited, and I took him up to the parking garage rooftop view, and we saw the skyline. And he goes, "Why do people want to live like that, all on top of each other?" You know, just different, you know, different strokes for different folks. Some people like the suburbs, some people like the country, some people like the city. You're free to move about the country, you know. And there's a nice holiday lights. We're going by St. James Cathedral here. Yeah, St. James Cathedral. The bell tower survived the 1871 Great Chicago Fire, but was greatly damaged. The roof was destroyed, and so they rebuilt this along with the Holy Name Cathedral. But we've gone inside there. We got reruns if you're interested. Here's the Dree House. I don't have reruns of the Dree House. They won't let me film in there, but they have their lessons and carols. Oh, that's for St. James. Tiffany lamps. They got Tiffany lamps at the Gilded Age Dree House here. And there's the Cable House. We often film that. That was a railroad baron. Look at that Richardsonian Romanesque, that light-colored stone. And the McCormick's bought that. One time I saw some antique cars parked out in front of it. It was a great photo opportunity. It felt like you were in the 1920s. There's where the temporary casino is, that Onion Dome. That's the Medina. That's Temple Auditorium. Yeah, let's go down there and check that out. Hey, look at the nice, see there's the Murphy Memorial, and here's the Dree House. It's a museum. You can pay to go inside there, and if you can get inside that, it's beautiful. There's the trees here along Erie. The giant Starbucks is that way. But here's the Cable House, Chicago, Illinois. This is Wabash. Wabash used to be called Cass Street, and that's why this is called Hotel Cass. This is called Hotel Cass because Wabash used to be called Cass Street. I need to look into more why they changed the name. I think it's just because Wabash was south of the river. When they built the bridge, they just changed the name because it was confusing. Here's, see how it says casino? This is the, used to be the Medina Temple Auditorium. The Shriners used to have the circus there. Hey, look, there's a bakery here. Here, Pizzeria Due's. We'll show you Pizzeria Uno's. There's your Chicago style pizza. And they also own Su Casa, which is a Mexican restaurant. But here's the Ontario and Wabash, Chicago, Illinois, United States of America, planet Earth. Hey, here's Santa. Santa's climbing up the ladder. He's climbing up the Pizzeria Due's. Hey. Pizza cooking classes. Ha! Look, they got the... I was like, what is this? A popsicle? It's like a light. I guess it's that. But look at this beautiful mansard roof, French style Pizzeria Due. But look at this Moorish Moroccan style. The Shriners love this. Shriners were they're part of the Masons, and they look. It says Medina at the top. This is the Bally's temporary casino site. Was it last night? No, it was. Yeah, last night we went by the future location there. It's under construction there. The North Branch, they're building the permanent casino, and so I'm wondering what this is going to be once that's finished. We'll see what happens. Maybe it'll go back to being a furniture store. There, Italy. So there's Uno's. There's Pizzeria Uno's. This is Ohio and Wabash, Chicago, Illinois. We got 7:43 in the a.m. here. We got about 40 degrees. We're heading to work here. We'll cross the street. Here's Italy. Probably in the wintertime we'll get inside Italy. We'll probably do that at lunchtime sometime. We'll go inside Italy when it's cold and nasty to get warmed up. But we got to head to work here. We got 7:43 in the a.m. Your big giant parking garage here. There. Hey, Italy. Italian grocery here. So what happened here? Let's see. Cheesecake. Yeah, Ernie likes cheesecake, so do I. Pistachio ice cream there. Yeah, this is Chicago. Welcome to Chicago. New York's a good city too. We'll see how Mondami does there. I guess he's going to meet with the president later this week. Would you like to be a fly on the wall in that meeting? We'll see if the president still cares about his home city in New York there, if he wants to bash it. So let's see, we got Shake Shack. We're at Rush Street in Ohio. So we'll probably head straight over Michigan Avenue. Otherwise, you end up underneath the, you end up underneath the Gwynn and the Nordstrom Mall there, and it's kind of weird over there, much like service parking lots and stuff. So I'd rather go straight over Michigan Avenue, since I need to get to Michigan Avenue anyway, because that's where I work. So hey, welcome to Chicago. Look at the Windy City buses here, Windy City limos. This is Ohio Street, AMC Theaters. Yeah, I'm looking forward to checking out the Kris Kringle market there, the German market there at Daily Plaza. We've been watching them set it up the last 2 weeks. They're going to open it up for the whole holiday season here. We got so many festive things coming up. We got to rest up here. Hey, let's get on the bus here. There's people getting on the bus. How you doing? I'm just had everything. It's a good thing. Well, yeah, I'll get on the bus. Yeah, that's good. They were seeing if I want to go on the bus. I said, "Where's it going?" You don't know where the buses are going nowadays, you know. Yeah, Philadelphia. Hey, I was thankful the Philadelphia Eagles. Not only did you beat Green Bay Packers over a week ago on Monday night, you beat Detroit Lions, which both of those games helped out the Bears. So thanks, Philadelphia Eagles, for helping out the Bears there. That's great. So here we're at Michigan Avenue. This is Michigan Avenue, the Magnificent Mile. It's not as magnificent as it used to be, but that's what it used to be called. And then they got the nice, it'll look magnificent Saturday night. They'll shoot fireworks off. They'll have a whole parade. They'll light up all the lights here. And we'll try to film it for you. And if you can't watch it live, you can watch the reruns. And then for the next month, we'll be walking underneath the lights here. And you can check out the Christmas lights, holiday lights of Michigan Avenue, whether you live here or not. There, we're across Michigan Avenue. Medians here, they got all the plants out of medians. Pallets in the truck here. Get your iris scan. So we're across from the Nordstrom Mall. This is Grand Avenue, Michigan Avenue, Chicago, Illinois. November the 20th, 2025. We got 7:46 in the AM Central Time Zone. And we got about low 40s degrees Fahrenheit. It's like single digits Celsius. But any day above freezing is a good day in Chicago, even in November. People keep saying, where's the snow? That snow happened last Monday, over a week and a half ago, and it was melted last week by Wednesday. But we'll probably get some more. Maybe in time for a white Christmas, we'll see. But they're in Continental Hotel. They got the new holiday displays up here. We saw them taking down the pumpkin earlier this week. They had the pumpkins up. So hey, they got the street closed off here. I think this is probably going to be staging area for the parade. They're starting to take away the garbage cans for the parade, and they're starting to put up these barricades. This is in preparation of the Saturday night, the Light Up Michigan Avenue lights parade there. They'll have all the Disney characters, and we'll try to stream it. You can watch the rerun from last year. And here's Illinois Street here, so yeah, we'll dash across here. Yeah, look at all these barricades. They got all the barricades ready for the parade. It's only Thursday. Hey, I smell some more pine trees here. You got some little spruce trees. Yeah, they're putting up the decorations. They're getting ready. Hey, Realtor building looks nice. You got to put, oh, the smell of fresh pine there. Yeah, it smells great. They'll cover all that up there. Look, there's Nathaniel Hale. Hey, Revolutionary War martyr there. Nathaniel Hale. He said, I regret I have but one life to give for my country. And how much we take that for granted. There's people willing to live, to pay. Everybody that signed the Declaration of Independence, if they lost that war, England, they probably would have hanged them. You know, people got hung, both loyalists and patriots, Native American, enslaved people fought in that war. They fought. They claimed they would give them freedom. They didn't. Many of the founding fathers were slave owners. We know about this, you know, and so a dream deferred, but it eventually happened. We eventually took so much longer. Eventually, the arc of history bends towards justice there. But here's yeah, we got the Christmas tree here. Here's the back of Jack Brick House, and here's the Wrigley Building, Michigan Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, 7:49 a.m. This is the only tree that has the lights on already. See, they got the Christmas tree for the Wrigley Building right there. They'll light that up. They're probably waiting for the parade. But this one, hey, tag us on Instagram for a chance to be featured there. You sign the code there, or scan the code there. But here's the Christmas tree in Pioneer Plaza by the Apple Store. Yeah. Yeah, Florida. Thanks for tuning in from Florida there. So I know you got better weather there. And I certainly appreciate visiting Florida in the wintertime to get out of this cold. But we enjoy it here holiday time. It's nice at first, and then you get tired of it by January and February. Here's the Apple Store, Chicago River. There's the Tribune Tower. There's the Wrigley Building. There's the Trump Tower. Michigan Avenue. We'll cross the DeSable Michigan Avenue Bridge. Hey, look at all the barricades. So they got all the barricades, road closures. Just getting ready for the holiday parade. So at lunchtime, we plan on checking out the Kris Kringle Market there. I know I sound like a broken record, but I'm getting the plug in there. And if you miss it, there'll be a rerun. And we'll probably go to the Kris Kringle Market about 20 times in the next month. You know, we'll just keep going to it over and over again so everybody gets tired. We'll film it on TikTok. We'll film it on YouTube. You know. We passed the Jean Baptiste Point DeSable statue there, Joliet Marquette, Native Americans. There's the Chicago River. There's the Trump Tower, Wrigley Building. Larry loses. There's the pace bus. So yeah, this was briefly one time called the Stone Container Building, but I know it as the London Guarantee Insurance Building, and they call it the London House Hotel now. Now that building was also called the Smurfit Stone Building, and that's what I call the Smurfit Stone Building. But they don't. That company is not in there anymore. Now it's just 150, or they're not the primary leaseholders. So it's just 150 North Michigan, and this is just the London House Hotel. There's the Marriott Towers, Trump Tower, Chicago River. We'll head across Wacker Drive here. And I'm gonna head straight to work here. 7:52. The architecture, that's good. Yeah, add it to your bucket list. Or you could just watch. The Chicago live streamers. You know, you can watch it virtually if you want to see it in person. Yeah, it's great. So here we'll cross Wacker Drive here. Got all the barricades getting ready to go here for the parade. There's the Chicago Architecture Center, Fannie Mae, Blackhawk store. Hey, I guess the Bulls won last night. It was the second three-pointer shot. The Bulls have been having an exciting season so far. I'm happy we got some Chicago teams that are actually exciting to watch now. The Blackhawks, the Bulls, and the Bears. They're the three Bs. Hey, there's the Jewelers Building, the dome up there. I think Jan Associates still has that, which are architects. Here's Bedard. Best uniform in NHL history there. Probably the most controversial too, besides the unnamed Washington team there. But we're one of the few Indigenous mascot teams that survived. The Illini lost theirs, and I'm glad that the Cleveland Indians, Chief Wahoo, was just That was a horrible caricature, and I know people liked it, but it still was wrong. And that was the amazing thing. Most indigenous people I talked to, that the term Indians wasn't offensive. It wasn't that they were called Cleveland Indians. It was the Chief Wahoo mascot with the big nose and the cartoon. It looked like a Bugs Bunny bad caricature of what, you know, the indigenous stereotype, the barrel-chested, you know, smiling Indian there, Native American. And even the Chicago Blackhawks, it's really after, it was named after a World War II or World War I. It must go back to World War I because Blackhawks go back to 1926. It was a mascot for a military group, you know, division. And of course, there was a Chief Blackhawk. He was the leader of the Falk and Sox during the Black Hawk War in Illinois. Abraham Lincoln fought in that. On the American side, Chief Blackhawk fought on in the Falk and Sox tribe. His real name was Mukatamish Okia Kayak. I'm sure I'm butchering that. I'm horrible with my indigenous languages, but and we Americans called him Chief Blackhawk. Oops, here comes some sirens here. Here comes the ambulance. So there's your Thursday morning wake-up call from Chicago, deafening sirens on a Thursday. But hey, I'm going to head to work here. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks to the mods. Thanks to everybody for commenting there. I know I missed most of the comments, but thanks for listening to my historical diatribe there. We'll go check out the Kris Kringle Market at lunchtime there, noon to 1 on YouTube. And then tonight after 5, we'll head up to the Bloomingdale's Mall and see if we can see the Rockettes and the Angel and the drummer boys and all that stuff. And yeah, have a good Thursday there. We'll see you at lunchtime. We'll check out the Kris Kringle. I'm looking forward to it. We'll get some gluten wine, get some roasted almonds, some schnitzel. They got a beer garden. We'll see some ornaments. We'll see how crowded it is. So hey, we'll talk to you later. Thanks a lot. Thanks mods. Thanks Chris and everybody else for being on. And we'll see. Thanks Grandma's Corner and everybody else. And we'll see you later today. Yeah. Thanks a lot, everybody. 243. Oh, I almost got hit by a bus.